Good morning. I can't see because this is in my face, but I trust that you're really there. So I've been invited to talk about my personal experience, and I want to begin to say that I sure could have used Paul's TikToks, because I, in September of 2023, apparently stepped into a nymph nest wearing shoes and socks, but nonetheless got more than 30 bites on my feet. And I have pictures, but I decided not to show them to you. That's how bad they were. So I am going to reflect on my experience since then, and I'm calling my talk, Look Inside Your Sandwich. And that is because I've had some very interesting food experiences, even here on the vineyard, where it is way better than on the mainland. So look at this sandwich. This is supposed to be turkey. This is supposed to be a turkey sandwich. What do you see on the bottom? Can you see it? Cheese. Yes, you got it. So I had a labeled vegan sandwich in Edgartown. It was supposed to be sweet potatoes and avocado. After the turkey experience, I opened up my vegan sandwich, and what do you think was in there? That's a good idea, but no, this time it was cheese again. And so my husband went back and showed them the cheese, and we got a $20 gift certificate. I think that's way better than anaphylactic shock, but I would prefer not to have that experience again in the future. I went to a very, very nice restaurant and gave a careful description of my allergy to the gentleman who was waiting on us. I explained this is not virtue signaling. This is a serious allergy. And my risotto came, and I carefully added, and there was something sprinkled on the top. And what do you think it was? Cheese. Parmesan. Yes, cheese, more cheese. So I went to a Shake Shack in Harvard Square, which is where I live when I'm not on Chappaquiddick, and I ordered there the vegan burger, and within a couple of hours I was seeing stars, could barely stay conscious, terrible digestive impact. Later researching it out, guess what? They cook the vegan burger on the same grill as the bacon. Great. So let me say that I have had skin, I've had abdominal symptoms. I had a trip recently to urgent care where I can tell you the doctor in the city had never heard of alpha-gal. So I sat down with him and we got on the internet so I could show him for future people. The idea, Cambridge is close enough people from Cambridge come to the vineyard, right? That you would imagine they would have a clue what goes on. No. So another thing you'll hear is, oh, so you can't have gluten? And you're like, no, this has nothing to do with gluten. But they want to help you be gluten-free. So get ready. A lot of people do not know what a mammal is. So when you say you can't have mammal meat, they say things like, what? No eggs? I'm not making this up. I even had a doctor say that to me. So could you just call out the names of some mammals for me?
Squirrel. Platypus.
I don't know, platypus. Platypus lays eggs. Kangaroos, by the way, are very heavy in alpha-gal. And even though the babies live in the pouch, they are born live. And there are people in Australia who have kangaroo burgers, and I would never want one. I think they're cute. But they go into anaphylactic shock at night. So, not kangaroo burgers. So, here on the vineyard, my next slide, we have an ag fair. And so we hope here on the vineyard people know the difference between a chicken and some of our mammals. I've been wondering if maybe, especially those of us who are leaving the island some of the time, should be carrying food cards. People don't necessarily speak English. They may be friendly, they may nod. You may think they understood what you said, but often that is not the case. What if we developed some food cards? You could help us with that. And that we could carry so that if we went food shopping, we run prepared foods, or we went to a food truck or a restaurant, we could show these and put X's across what we couldn't have. We could even say, take this back to the chef, right? And show him, I don't want any of these things on my plate. So next slide, please. So one of the things we can do for each other is find places that have food we can eat and that accurately label them. And I am a big fan of Lucky Hank's in Edgartown, where when they did not have ice cream I could eat, the vegan hostess at the restaurant gave me a pot from her personal supply. That's pretty great. Also, you will find that the Yum Truck window at the Sunday and Thursday Artisans Fair is completely alpha-gal free. So at least a couple of times a week you can go out. Next, please.
How about good pierogi?
Just invite me over. Next slide. So I have started with a design for what I'm calling the AGF FSQ, the Alpha-Gal Friendly Food Service Questionnaire, and it goes several pages, but my idea is that some of the folks who are here today and others from public health should be able to get together and produce a questionnaire so that we can advocate and educate. And when folks want to go out to eat, the menus here will be properly labeled. This will increase the number of people who feel comfortable going out. It will make it way easier for the servers. And believe it or not, there are a lot of places in the country where people have alpha-gal, and they got it way before us. Maybe they'd like to come and visit Martha's Vineyard. After all, the New York Times is advertising, that's right. So, next, please. As part of my journey, one of the things I discovered is that over-the-counter medications and prescriptions also have alpha-gal in them. And don't necessarily expect a city doctor or your pharmacist to be acquainted with what these are. And so I want to make you aware of this website, www.pillclarity.org. One of the leaders of this group, his name is Dr. Sachin A. Shah, did give a talk for the Vineyard Haven Library, and I do believe that is available to you. And he goes through quite an educational program for you, so warns you in advance about some things, but also lets you know that these services are available. If you would like to be an ambassador for Pill Clarity, and I actually reached out to them and said, try this, folks can become ambassadors and they can talk to their physicians, they can talk to their pharmacies and educate folks that your service is available. So you might want to do that. In terms of personal care products, I have to say that there are listings on the web of things you might want to try and you might want to avoid. Lanolin, for example, is a natural wax extracted from the wool of sheep. And an awful lot of those things you like to put on when you have a sunburn have lanolin in them, so watch out. But then the question is, how far should you go? And in part of my preparation for this talk, I kind of searched around, and one of the things I found was there are even recommended toilet papers for people with alpha-gal. So in case you're looking, Angel Soft, Scott, and 7th generation are the recommended toilet papers. So, next please. So the question that has come up about EpiPens, and I was very interested to hear what was said already this morning. I was just actually surprised to be sent home from the Martha's Vineyard emergency room after 32 tick bites without an EpiPen. Because I thought, what if before my test came back, I went into shock, right? I'd be on Chappaquiddick. Not a great spot to be looking for help, right? So I don't know what the policy is now, but I wonder if that's something that should be revisited. So I do now carry one everywhere I go, and I also have in the folder with these a sheet for whatever relative or stranger happens to be with me when this happens about what they're supposed to do. So, next please. So we're hearing a lot about how much Lone Star problems are rising on the island. And we know that the CDC does require reporting of Lyme. But alpha-gal is not an infection, and the government, the United States government, does not require reporting. But again, doing a little research, states now require reporting. Arkansas, Delaware, Nebraska, North Dakota, Rhode Island, Virginia, and pending, as of March, Tennessee, South Carolina, and West Virginia. Given what's happening here, right, and potentially on the Cape and elsewhere, maybe this is something we should be advocating for, especially if having this data helps with the allocation of funds for further research. So, what about treatment? And we're told there is no treatment, right? My work colleague, friend from Arkansas, when he heard I had this, said, oh, you know, we got this all over Arkansas. We use acupuncture. We use auricular acupuncture. That means they put a piece of metal in your ear, and it stays there for a month. And my friend put me on the phone with friends of his who claim they were having reactions before this, and they are not having reactions now. And there is a published research series. I hope there will be more for us to follow up on. I've also read and shared with some of the team members a recent article where they're now beginning to really understand some of the precursors for anaphylactic shock, and they may be able to help us organize our physiology so that we're less likely to have these reactions. So I think, there's a lot to be hopeful about here. Next. So I would like to suggest that we adapt and thrive. I'm planning to get a very large NIH grant to sample non-dairy ice creams. And I think, my Harvard credentials will help the federal government want me to have this grant.
Any volunteers?
Yeah, good. So these are three of my favorites. And it's interesting, you can You can see that alpha-gal must be increasing because it was easier to get these earlier. Even last year it was easier to get these. Now, if you happen to see a bunch of Oatly, I would suggest you just fill your cart with every one that's in there because people are buying them up. Next and final, it is absolutely true that sacrifices are required to assure our safety, but there is also, I believe, at least for us, a silver lining that these same dietary restrictions have historically been encouraged by folks who have ethical and religious concerns about the treatment of farm animals and about climate change. So there is, I think, some compensation for the anxiety and for the restrictions because the alpha-gal diet is better for the planet. Thank you.
Okay. So when I graduated college, I thought my life was just beginning. I moved to my dream city. I landed an awesome job. I was having the time of my life. It felt like nothing could stop me. And then overnight, my life drastically changed. My face was paralyzed. I had fatigue so debilitating that walking up a flight of stairs was a challenge, and brain fog so severe I had trouble forming sentences. I couldn't believe that this was my life, and that it would only be the beginning, just not the beginning I envisioned. So in the summer of 2022, I went to an outdoor wedding in upstate New York, and about a month after, I started having some strange symptoms, but it was still the time of COVID, so I chalked up my head and neck pain, trouble recalling words, night sweats, and other flu-like symptoms to the ever-evolving virus. But I kept testing negative, and something didn't feel right. And then one morning, I woke up, and I couldn't move the right side of my face. I began to panic. I thought I was having a stroke. So I went to the urgent care, where the doctor assured me that no, I wasn't, but that I had something called Bell's palsy. And I'd only heard of Bell's palsy because Justin Bieber had gotten it like 2 weeks earlier. She told me she didn't know what caused Bell's palsy, but that it was inflammation in the brain that causes your facial nerves to stop working. But I figured if Justin Bieber was fine, then I guess I would be too. Since I was already there, I asked her to take a look at an itchy spot I had on my back. She found a massive bullseye rash that took up almost the entire width of my back. I expected her to run some tests and tell me what was going on, but instead, she wrote me a few prescriptions, told me I would be fine, and sent me home. This would be the first of several times that I was failed by the medical system that was supposed to protect me. Unfortunately, that story is not unique. Countless Lyme patients go undiagnosed and suffer silently for years before getting a proper diagnosis. I walked out of urgent care, hopeless and scared. So I did what anyone would do, and I called my mom. And that ended up working out really well for me, because she's an amazing clinician who knew that Bell's palsy and a bullseye rash are telltale signs of Lyme disease. She got on a plane that day to New York, drew my blood, and tested it. The results came back positive. I had neurological Lyme disease. We caught it at the end of the acute stage and beginning of the chronic stage. She found me a Lyme literate doctor. Now, I would not be sitting up here today living the quality of life that I'm living if it wasn't for an early diagnosis. So thank you, Mom. She took me home to Atlanta for treatment for what I thought would be 2 weeks, became 2 months, became 2 years. In addition to Lyme, the tick that bit me infected me with several other diseases known as co-infections. I had brucella, babesia, and Bartonella, all with their own hosts of symptoms requiring their own treatments. My experienced Lyme doctor told me I had the highest levels of babesia she had ever seen in her career. Babesia affected my neurological system in such a way that it made me feel like I was going insane. I suffered from severe insomnia. I would go days without sleeping. Additionally, the state health department called me up asking if I work in a lab with animals because they rarely see the brucella disease in humans. No, I work in finance in an office building in the middle of Manhattan, about as far away from animals as you could get. Brucella gave me countless fevers and night sweats. These infections also reactivated the dormant Epstein-Barr virus in my body, contributing to the never-ending fatigue, and triggered something called mast cell activation syndrome, causing me to constantly break out to full-body hives, sometimes even screaming out in fiery pain. So once Lyme enters the chronic stage, and you're dealing with all of these co-infections, there is no one-size-fits-all treatment. So for the next 6 months, I underwent intense IV antibiotic therapy, sometimes every day. I spent hundreds of hours in a hyperbaric oxygen chamber and took up to 42 pills a day. Treatment became my full-time job. I couldn't believe that this was my new normal. While the world around me kept spinning, mine remained still. So here's something about Lyme treatment that most people don't know, is when you do a treatment, like an IV antibiotic, you actually feel worse. And it's something called a Herxheimer reaction, or herxing, when the bacteria die off faster than your body can clear them. You're left with all these icky toxins floating around. And for me, it felt like my body was rotting from the inside out. So not only were the treatments hard, but the aftermath was often worse. But I quickly learned that it would have to get worse before it could get better. So I was constantly pushing my body to its limit all the time, and sometimes too much, causing my body to rage against me. My mom's incredible nurses saved me from many trips to the ER. Come December of that year, feeling about 60% better, and my face had healed, I decided it's time to get my life back. So I moved back to New York City, not knowing that I was walking into the darkest time of my life. I struggled with everyday life, and I was constantly having flare-ups. Friends would say, "You seem better now," or "You look fine." And although I might have looked it, I felt the furthest thing from it. By the time I finished my commute to the office, I was already running on empty, but I still expected myself to function like I was fine. I'd go to dinner with friends, hoping for a sense of normalcy, only to leave halfway through because my body felt like it had been lit on fire. Every waking moment was consumed with how horrible I felt. I couldn't remember what it felt like to feel good. And then one night, I had an extremely high fever. I ended up blacking out, and when I woke up the next morning, I was unable to move, and I was drenched in sweat. I thought I was dying. That was the moment that Lyme broke me. It broke my spirit. It sent me into a deep depression. I didn't have suicidal thoughts, but for the first time, I understood the desire to take away the pain. It was unbearable. I felt like I was drowning, and that I would be forever, and that no one would be able to save me. Crushed by the physical symptoms, and now the weight of it all mentally, I moved home again. I remember standing in the airport with tears streaming down my face, not knowing how I would carry my bags. Strangely, I didn't feel anger. I felt defeated. I felt numb, and I accepted that this would be the rest of my life. Back at home, I felt like a prisoner in my own body, at the mercy of a relentless disease. I was desperate to heal, so I found a new Lyme doctor and started a new protocol. But I didn't know if I believed that it could work for me. Around the same time, I stumbled upon meditation. I started to understand that maybe there was something to this whole mind-body connection thing, and that how you feel and how you think can impact your body. I realized that if I kept thinking and feeling like I would never heal, then I never would. So I started to meditate about what it would be like to live in a healthy body, something that felt unimaginable to me at the time. I started focusing on emotions like wholeness, love, and gratitude for what my life might look like if I were fully healed, and the mindset that would go with that. And slowly, through diligent practice, that voice became louder than the resentment, the fear, and the constant why me. I started to relinquish the control I had over my life and began to trust that maybe, just maybe, there was a greater plan for my life. I felt a sense of peace in how my life was unfolding. I understood that I had to break in order to rebuild. But even as hope started to grow, I realized that deep down, I was scared to heal. Lyme had begun to define me, and I wasn't sure who I was without it. But meditation helped me peel all of that back. It helped me reconnect with who I was beneath the illness. And ultimately, meditation gave me the belief that I could heal. It was the missing puzzle piece in my healing journey. When I combined that inner work with the new treatments, it was like hitting a tennis racket in the sweet spot. I started to get better. Over that summer, my baseline improved. I'll never forget the day that I was able to walk 2/3 of a mile without stopping. And although I was exhausted at the end, I did it. The thick brain fog started to clear, and the weight of the depression started to lift. I found joy for life again, and I knew I was going to heal. A few months later, I started a new job, which was a huge milestone for me, but it wasn't easy. It took months to retrain my brain to think critically again, and work drained all of my energy. Every moment that I wasn't working, I was sleeping, I was doing treatment, or I was meditating. And that cycle lasted a full year before I felt like I was back to living a somewhat normal life again. And once I felt well enough, I knew I wanted to give back. So I joined the junior board of an organization called Project Lyme, one of today's sponsors, to help raise awareness, fund research, and help patients navigate this complex disease. Through it all, I felt more gratitude for my body and a love for life than I ever thought was possible, not in spite of what I had been through, but because of it. I'm especially grateful it led me to a meditation practice that I still do today. I wouldn't change a thing about my past because it led me to this very moment, where I can so proudly say that now, 3 years out, I've fully healed and I've gone from the victim of this disease to the victor over my life. So here's what I want you to take away. Check for ticks and advocate for yourself if you have unexplained symptoms. Or if you're deep in the fight against Lyme now, that this is hope, that you'll join me on the other side along thousands of others who have healed.
Any questions?
Under Our Skin. Your story, it mirrors what I saw in a YouTube movie that showed once in Edgertown movie theater about 15, 20 years ago. It's called Under Our Skin. It's a 2-part movie on YouTube. You went through what this 2-hour movie explained. The end of it was that they were suspicious that both the CDC and the World Health Organization refused to acknowledge ticks as an source of epidemics. And I wanted any of the medical professionals here to both comment on the usefulness of this sort of old movie and also this theory about Lyme being dismissed. Thank you.
I'll have to check it out. I haven't
Any
heard of it.
comments? can say that throughout this entire morning, it has been so apparent to me that, yes, it's very important to know that dark skin responds differently to erythema, and yes, it's important to realize that people's rashes are all different and won't be necessarily made aware to the patient or the physician. But the most important thing, I think, is that our medical community, we live in a heightened community of Lyme disease on the vineyard. But I live in Boston, where Harvard is the mecca, and I cannot tell you the number of days that a patient comes to my office with symptoms that are definitely Lyme, and that doctors at Harvard have not tested for this disease. I call Jake on a daily basis to ask him questions about which PCR, how do I do that? Because that's not what I do anymore, but I certainly feel that our medical community has to really be ignited in terms of knowing that there are so many symptoms, not the obvious ones always. I had a patient on Thursday whose daughter was 19 and had 2 unusual seizures. And yes, she comes to the vineyard on a weekly basis, and no one had done Lyme disease titers or all of the Tick Borne Illness. So I think that's really the push that has to happen, and it's not yet happening.
Okay, so I think we're just about out of time until our final performance. Oh, I'm sorry. This is Mom, right?
Yeah, I'm Georgie's mom. And I just want to point out that she was seen by a New York City doctor who did not give her doxycycline. They gave her Valtrex, prednisone, and Bactrim with the bullseye rash. I'm licensed in the state of New York. I flew up there. I didn't know anyone in the street, and I was like, we are grabbing this bull by the horns because we are not going to make this a lifetime illness. And I just did lab core tests. I did IgM, G, both were positive. And that's when I enlisted the help of the doctor. I had co-managed patients by the entertainment industry, diagnosed with Lyme. She's in Los Angeles. And she's get a PIC inhibitor as soon as you can. Here's what we're going to do. And we went through a course of IgM. First, we did the testing. Nothing that she ordered the labs. With her LA address. And the LA County Health Department called her and said, you know, do you work in a lab with animals? Craziness. And she also said, get her in a hypoglycemic chamber. You know, let her see there as much as possible. So, you know, along with that, just all of the herdsing, all of the other reactions. I mean, I'm boarded in functional medicine. That's the way I practice. So there's a lot of support that can be done alongside these really heavy treatments to help someone get through. So that's my wheelhouse. I'm not Lyme literate. I don't know enough. Much needed for learning here for me. So, anyway, we're just extremely grateful to be on the other side.
Okay, well, thank you.